Hi there, guys. Just some ordinary dude here, and I'm joined again by Alana. How are you today?
Hi, I'm doing good today.
Yeah, that's good. And this is another edition of Discussions with the Dude. And we're a little late to the party for this, but we're going to talk about Christmas themed episodes. And depending how long this goes, we may even bring up a couple of winter themed episodes that aren't specifically Christmas related. We'll see how we go. But there's a few Christmas episodes from the Loud House alone that we could discuss. So yeah, we might as well talk about that given the time of year we're at. I mean, even though Christmas Day has already been, there's still a sort of general feeling of Christmas for a few more days. So screw it, we might as well talk about it. So if we're going to start talking about Christmas themed episodes, I think the one we really have to start with is the very first one, and widely considered to be one of the absolute best episodes of the entire program. 11 Lads Are Leaping. Now, this is an episode. Well, I think this was one of the very first 22-minute long episodes. It might have been the first one, actually, thinking about it. Um,
Yeah, I think it was the first one.
yeah, that does sound right. The first 22-minute episode, the very beginning of season two. And obviously quite groundbreaking in a lot of ways. Like people will probably forget this now because it's been so long, but it was the episode that would, of course, reveal Lynn Senior and Rita's faces for the first time. Which was obviously
Yeah.
quite a big thing because back in the first season they were treated like Charlie Brown adult characters where their faces were never shown. Um, Although
Yeah,
they
that
did.
was so crazy at the time. I remember seeing that and just being like so shocked that they even like did that.
Yeah, I'm guessing. I don't know. It's something. Yeah, it's stuff that Charlie Brown and Ed and Eddie and all that did. When adults didn't show up in it very often, and when they did, you'd never see their faces. And also the Powerpuff Girls did that with Miss Bellum as well.
Yeah.
um, so some cartoons did do this for various reasons, but yeah. Apart from that, though, obviously it gave a lot of backstory to Mr. Grouse. Again, like we said, it's the first 22-minute episode, and of course there'll be a lot more of those to follow. Personally, I still have the belief that 22-minute episodes, more of those would actually be beneficial to the show because a lot of the worst episodes from the show are ones that have been rushed, like One of the Boys. Could have easily been a substantially improved episode if it was 22 minutes long, but they didn't do that. There's
Yeah, and I
quite.
was like wondering like what if they made like all the episodes like 22 minutes or like started doing that? Like I
I
don't
mean,
know if they would
I
actually
actually
do that,
think it
but
would be a benefit. I mean, a lot of people seem to disagree with this, but I'm like, I don't know, guys. Most of the 22-minute episodes, most, not all, are really strong. Are really strong stories. So I don't
yeah, like
see
you could
why
fit like
not.
so much more in 22 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just think it would be
I mean that
better.
could almost be a topic on its own we could discuss actually, but we could do that another time. But yeah, going back to 11 Lads of Leaping, it is a really phenomenal episode, and for a lot of good reasons. I mean, you could argue the first half of the story is mostly just like basic setup with a lot of just random things happening, but I think it's good to sort of show just not only the chaos surrounding the event, but also just people having a good time, people enjoying themselves, people having their own plans and things that they're doing, their own activities. Like each of the siblings has something that they're up to. Like Luann's doing her 12 puns of Christmas. Lynn and Lucy are trying to find some hidden present somewhere. Lynn's lifting a load of stuff. Luna's writing a song as normal. They're all doing their own little things for the event. And even though you could argue a lot of it's just okay that they're just doing stuff and it's not really going anywhere, it kind of does because yeah, all those things they do have payoff in the later half of the story, from what I remember. So that it's not like they don't just go anywhere. There is some sort of setup and payoff in this first act, but obviously it's the second half that really elevates this from a great story to an exceptional one, in my opinion. Because it's when Lincoln gets to Mr. Grouse's house, that's where it really, really picks up. And it's one of the most heartwarming and emotionally strong sequences in the entire show. This previously, one-shot character that people didn't really care about. It's like, okay, he's quite a compelling character now, um, and also it would then have a really great ending where it would show yeah, the genuine good-hearted side of the Loud family. I mean, the entire city does see them as a bit chaotic and a bit wild and everything, and some people probably find them annoying. But episodes like this do show actually they are fundamentally good people and they will do good things for people sometimes. And it's just a really fun and satisfying and emotionally satisfying conclusion to this whole story. Um, yeah, I mean, I can't really say too much about 11 Lads of Leaping because a lot of it's already been said. Everyone's already praised this episode to death over the years. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I
I
think
mean,
you go.
so like I do like the beginning of it as well, like as the second half. I think like the beginning of it does like a really good job of setting everything up. Like it shows how kind of like how the Louds kind of how their Christmases go, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they
Yeah,
each
yeah,
have like their own like thing they do around Christmas time. And then kind of the second half focuses more on Mr. Grouse. So I kind of
yeah,
like that.
yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think it is structured pretty well. I mean, for me, I don't. Yeah, I like the first half as well because it just shows. It gives every Loud sister something to do, even though the story isn't really about them. It's about Lincoln and Mister Grouse. It still gives every single member of the main family something to actually keep themselves occupied. It gives them all a few gags, a few moments in the spotlight here and there. It still like maintains the really solid interactions of the siblings, which is obviously the groundwork of the entire show. It balances character focus on quite a large scale very well, actually. Um, Even though like it's not a priority of the story, like you don't have to really do anything with the Loud siblings, but the fact that it does, I think speaks volumes to how truly exceptional this story is. A lot of lesser episodes would just sort of forget about them, and to an extent, "Twas the Fight Before Christmas" was guilty of this, but we'll get to that later in the discussion. Um,
I also
but
think the background music in this episode was really beautiful, like in a lot of the scenes, like especially like around like the second half. I think a lot of the music was really good. Like I don't know how
yeah,
to explain it. It's just
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's it. I mean, a lot of things like the music was very good here. Sound design in general was really good, and also for season 1 slash early season 2, the animation and the visuals here were really stunning. Like easily the best of the show so far at that point.
yeah,
Um,
even like stuff small, like even like some of the small stuff, like kind of like the sunset in the background on one of
yeah,
those like scenes.
yeah. And of course, what stands out to me in that regard is the scene where they're all singing a Christmas. They're all at Mr. Grouse's front door, and it's the scene where you see the parents' faces for the first time, and that whole scene is like visually stunning to look at. It's like looking back at it, like the whole mise en scène, the lighting, everything. It just looks really well done. Easily the best animation in the show of the early years, I'd say, of the first 2 seasons. You can tell. I think
I
there was a bit
definitely
of a
agree with
higher
that.
budget for this episode than some of the other normal episodes. I would guess. I would guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like how like even after this episode, Mr. Grouse is like a little less grumpy, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Like
I
he
mean,
kind of warms up to the Louds a bit more.
yeah, I mean, obviously there's still episodes after this where he is annoyed with them, but it's never as bad. Like he is capable of bonding with them sometimes. Again, he's still a bit grouchy, but it's not. Yeah, it's not as bad. Like you say, it was a little bit more downplayed. It didn't radically change his character completely, but it did change it somewhat. There is a noticeable difference before and after, which is always a nice thing because early seasons Loud House especially did not have the strongest implementation of continuity.
Yeah, definitely not.
Right. But yeah, I
And they
mean
even show
that's
later on that like Mr. Grouse like kind of grew a bond with a lot of the kids. Like they show that in I think it was For Sale by Loner or something like that, where he like tried to move away and then he realized he missed them.
yeah, and he ended up moving in with Mr. Bolhoffner or something. He was even more of a grouch than him, and he's like, okay, I better go away from here.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I do vaguely remember that one. But obviously, there were episodes after this where he would bond with the other Louds. Like there was Good Sports with Lynn Jr. and there was well, he didn't really bond with Lola in Diamonds Are Forever, but he did sort of well, he sort of did have a bit of an interaction. He did sort of make up for her in the end in that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I suppose there are things like that. I mean, the only episode I can remember where he had any sort of major role at all. I don't actually. Was this episode before or after? No, this episode would have been after 11 Hours of Leaping, wouldn't it? What was the one where they think they've got Lynn Senior fired and they try and get him a job in IT through Mr. Grouse? I'm trying to remember. Was that must have
Oh
been
yeah,
season
job
two?
insecurity.
That must have been season two, mustn't it? Because
Yeah.
yeah, because Lynn Senior's face would have been seen. Yeah, so no, that was after this episode. So yeah, but yeah, that I mean, yeah, 11 Hours of Leaping. We could talk about that one for a while, but I think the gist of it's been got across. People have talked to death about this one over the years. It's brilliant. It's regarded very highly for obvious reasons. But there are a few other Christmas themed episodes from the Loud House that we could discuss. I think the next one actually was later on in around season five. I mean, in the early seasons there were a lot of winter themed episodes like Snowboard, Snow Way Out, Snow Way Down, but they weren't really Christmas related. Um, but the next one that was actually about Christmas would have been season five, where we had two episodes actually right back to back off each other. The first of them being Season's Cheatings, which was an interesting case because this was a season five episode that did feel kind of like a season one episode, where it's got Lincoln dealing with his sisters and trying to negotiate and plan his way around them. It felt almost a bit like a rehash of the Sweet Spot, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think they
Where,
did that on purpose. They tried to like
yeah,
kind of have like those moments in the car where he was like screaming.
yeah, it's
And,
like it
like,
did feel like a season five version of the Sweet Spot, albeit slightly different. Instead of it devolving into the siblings all fighting in Vanzilla, it's mostly just like Lincoln trying to get his own good Christmas. Instead of trying to like negotiate which seat to sit in the van, he's trying to negotiate. Oh, which sister will I get buy me a gift? I'd rather it be Lenny, but oh wait, Lynn Jr. is going to beat me up if I do that. Okay, maybe Luna or whoever or Laurie, someone who will buy me a good gift because Lily's just going to give me some finger painting. Which yeah, I guess it's one of those things. When you're a kid, you're not really into gifts that have sentimental value. You just want gifts that have actual
yeah.
value. Um, and that was kind of the dilemma Lincoln faced because he knew he was going to be paired up with Lily. She was going to be the one to get him a gift. And Lily doesn't have any money because she's just a baby, so she'll give him some finger painting. And little fun fact: this episode is the one that sort of gave me the idea for Lily being potentially an artist when she's older, because this episode sort of plants that seed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I noticed that. She was painting a lot in this episode.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you guys, you can thank this episode for Souls of Art existing. Yeah, I mean, yeah, thinking about it, if it wasn't for this episode, I would have never have really encountered Amanda Loy. Because yeah, I did a bit of fan art based on Luna and Lily painting together, and sure enough, that's how Amanda first approached me. So that's how I met a professional Loud House comic writer. So I have that
Oh, that's pretty
this
cool.
episode to
Yeah.
thank for that. So there you go.
Yeah, that's pretty cool actually.
But yeah, I mean the episode itself, yeah, it's pretty solid. It I hold it in a similar regard to the Sweet Spot. Um, yeah, it's a fun little episode which shows which goes back to a return to form. Like a lot of people have criticised the later seasons for focusing less on the main Loud family. So I suppose an episode like this is maybe something that they're looking for. Although then again, it also has Lincoln getting the short end of the stick, which is another thing people complain about. So I suppose you can't win either way.
Yeah, I
uh,
guess not.
no, but yeah,
But
it
yeah, it
is
was
a
still
very
like
fun
a really
episode.
fun episode and like it did like show all the family like at Christmas time, so that was nice to see, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, this one's obviously just a normal 11-minute episode, so it didn't quite have the time to go into the same depth as something like 11 Hours of Leaping. But yeah, it was a fun story. It demonstrated the sibling dynamics and interactions very well. Um, it did kind of show the progress of the show in a sense, because again, if we compare it to the Sweet Spot, again, the most of the siblings are a lot less hostile and more. I guess they cooperate a bit more willingly with Lincoln this time around. They're not all
Yeah,
like trying to
definitely.
fight him as much, with except for Lynn Jr., I guess. But even then, you could argue that's a bit justified in context because he was trying to steal a gift. Um,
That's something I love about the later seasons actually is like how the siblings like mellowed out a bit more and they
yeah,
fight much less. Like they still fight, but like it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
like every
It's not as
episode.
mean spirited. It's not as frequent. And usually, when there is like a conflict between the siblings, it's over a bigger reason. There's more justification for it in context. And I suppose maybe Caesar's cheatings is a very good like landmark point of how much the relationship between the siblings has actually changed and progressed and evolved over time, over the seasons. Because again, if you do compare this to a season one episode like The Sweet Spot, you can see the difference. It's a very similar plot that in many ways plays out in a similar regard, but it's the sibling interactions and the way that they all deal with each other and negotiate with each other and just treat each other that is very different as of season five compared to season one. And maybe that's because Chris Savino was long gone by this point, and I think he was the one who made the conflicts as intense as they were. Um, because obviously the show was originally based loosely on his experience. He obviously hated his sisters by the sound of it, but there you go.
Yeah, it seems like that when you actually think about it. It's like,
Yeah,
dang.
yeah, I think Chris Savino. I mean, he was. What was he done for? He was done for like what, sexual harassment and assault and groping and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, it
And
was
you
pretty
have to
bad.
wonder, Chris Savino, he might have been an absolute massive misogynist who hated his sisters and possibly took it out on other women.
Yeah, I
It
wouldn't.
does start to look that way when you think about it. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was actually true. But
yeah, it does sound. Unfortunately, that does sound like the truth. If I'm honest, if you look at the way he wrote the early episodes of this show and what he based it on, and the way he treated other women, you have to think there is some truth to that. Unfortunately, um, but yeah, episodes like this, I think, do prove that you could still sort of return to the formula of season one, but do it in a somewhat more endearing and, you know, less mean spirited way. Sometimes the early season one episodes, while very fun, could get a little too mean spirited at times, I will admit. Um, and maybe this is a bit. You could argue season's cheating's. I don't know. I mean, I think the sweet spot was funnier, um, but Caesar's cheating's probably had better character interactions. So I suppose you could say
yeah,
which
I
one's
would
better than
prefer like
which.
seasons.
Yeah. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
But
I
Caesar.
prefer like seasons cheatings to the sweet spot. Like even though like the sweet spot had like more like humorous moments, the
Yeah.
seasons cheatings was just more like
Yeah,
endearing and
I
just
think
kind of
Caesar's
better.
cheatings is probably the best way of putting it. Caesar's cheatings is the more technically profound and efficient episode. The sweet spot is just a really funny story. It has some like really great moments that you remember. Like, oh, that was really funny. Like when they had the big fight at the end, that was absolutely like. There's no
Yeah.
one scene from Caesar's cheatings that matches that, but the overall episode is probably stronger.
Yeah, like the sweet spot had a lot of like slapstick and like it was just
Yeah,
funny like towards the end and it was just
yeah,
like kind of more comedy based. But yeah, I do like seasons cheatings a lot better
yeah.
if you were like comparing the two.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But then we had another episode just after this one in season five. They were pretty much paired together. And of course, everyone and their mothers has done a rip off of A Christmas Carol. There are so many parodies and interpretations of that classic Charles Dickens story. And of course, the Loud House had to do its own one. And who does it do it with? Flip.
I mean, it makes
Everybody's.
so much sense though.
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense, to be fair. I mean, you know what I would have liked? And I'm just going to say this right off the bat. I would have liked this episode a lot more if they actually kept that character development. Because,
Oh, definitely, yeah.
like, here's the thing. At this point, they're just overusing Flip to death. And I actually wouldn't have mind. I would have actually loved a Flipmas Carol if this was the episode where he changed permanently. And I guess they didn't want to do that because Flip, as he is so easy to get quick gags out of, and that's probably why they half the reason why they use him so much. So they didn't want to keep that continuity. They didn't want to keep that character development. They wanted to regress him again, which is a shame because it does kind of make this episode a bit pointless in retrospect. Um, I mean, it
Yeah.
was still a good, in terms of like its technical execution, it was actually quite a good story. It does have some pretty good twists on the original tale. It does use some of the characters quite well. Like you have, of course, Lucy is the ghost of the Christmas future. Yeah, that is very fitting.
Very
Um,
fitting.
I mean, yeah, it is like a really like well told story. Um,
Yeah, like I as much as I don't like Flip, I did actually enjoy this episode just because like it just worked so well. Like using Flip as like kind of like a Scrooge type character like made so much sense.
Yeah, I mean, it did make sense. They used the character. They did. I suppose they did choose the characters they used for the roles quite well. Um, yeah, it was like a fun, light-hearted take on a Christmas Carol. It had some good character development. It had some good humorous moments. You know, it had some pretty solid animation as well. You know, overall, it's like if you judge this episode on its own terms and merits, it's a great story. The only problem I have is like it's pointless when you look back at it in hindsight because it's not like it's not like a Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode where the continuity like it's not set in like this alternate version of the show. It's like this is just a normal episode that happens to be a retelling of a Christmas Carol, and it's like why doesn't his character development stick then? Why does it just get forgotten about in the next episode?
Yeah, it sucks because like they kind of showed like kind of Flip's past and everything, and I just feel like it would have like
Yeah.
just worked better if he had like developed a bit more like after this episode
Yeah, like you
because
don't really
just
like he doesn't change in any sort of way after this. Like the episode sort of ends with it like okay, he's sort of changing for the better now. No, no, he's still the same old Flip, and it's like okay, this episode was kind of pointless when you look back at it, and it's a shame because at this point I would have. Here's the thing: what else can they do with Flip? I mean, at this point they're overusing him to death. They're not going anywhere with the character particularly. It's like I would have like it would have been so great if this was the episode where they just changed Flip, and he became just a normal guy who wasn't and they didn't have the excuse to use him in every single damn episode. I mean, that would have been great looking back, but of course they didn't go there because they were like, I think this episode proves my theory that they want to use Flip all the time because it's easy to get quick gags out of his character, and because that's the case, they thought. No, no, no. We can't keep the character development from the end of this because then that character wouldn't be so. We wouldn't be able to get so much humor out of him anymore. And I
it's
think
like I understand that, but like I feel like they could do that with other characters. Like they could have other side characters be for like be used for gags and
yeah,
stuff
like
like that. Like
they could mix up a bit, like have different characters show up. I mean, I just did a podcast with Alex India about wasted characters. You've got plenty of characters in the show that you could do a lot more with, but apparently you don't have time for them. But you have time to include Flip in every goddamn episode, and it's like, you know,
yeah, and I wouldn't mind Flip as much if like he was used less. Just like I
that's
wish
it.
they
Yeah,
had more
I don't.
variety.
Yeah, I don't dislike Flip as a character. He can be funny sometimes. He's no Bender, as I've said before, but he can be all right. But characters like Flip and Scoots and Cheryl and Merrill and Bol Hoffner and all that, they're okay. They're fine. It's just that they're used quite a lot. This show has a very similar problem to The Amazing World of Gumball, in that while a very good series, it doesn't always focus on the right side characters. I always remember when I used to watch that show. I don't know if you've seen Gumball, Alana. You might not have
No.
done. Have you seen it?
No, I actually haven't. I've seen
No.
clips, but I haven't seen
Yeah,
like
well,
full
that had a
episodes.
similar issue to a point. Because with the school faculty characters, a lot of people wanted to see more of the other fellow students, but they weren't used that much. But they used a lot of the school faculty, like the teachers and the principal, who were okay, but not that particularly interesting. And I think the Loud House is the same. It uses a lot of like the recurring adult characters a lot, like Flip and Scoots and so on. But there are so many characters that the show just uses the odd one time, and then it's like you could do so much more with these, but they won't do it. Um,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not quite
unfortunate.
sure why. Like, you think about all the characters over the years they've introduced that they could do something with, like Rocky Spokes, Melly Ramos, Cricket Van Doren, some of the other pageant girls, some of the love interests that were introduced in the earlier seasons that were never brought back. Tabby, Polly Payne, Giggles. There are so many other characters you could have done something with, but the show never really did, and it's like, like some of them would show up again, but they wouldn't really get any other major roles or anything. And it's like you're not going to do anything with all these characters who have so much potential, but you're going to keep reusing these old characters that people aren't really bothered about. And it's like Gumball had the same problem, and I think maybe it's the fact that they're adult writers. Maybe they'd rather just write adult characters, even though the main appeal of the show is actually the kid characters, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Like the kid characters can sometimes be a bit more like interesting, but like I feel like if they're gonna use these characters a lot, they need to like flesh them out a bit more, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like Flip, for example,
but
like he just seems kind of one note and it just I don't know.
yeah, like that's it. Considering how much Flip is actually used, he's still relatively one note if you think about it. He's not that interesting. He's not that well rounded. And it's like, not relative to how much he's used, if that makes sense. Same with Scoots and so on. It's like, they're in it a lot, but only for like the same quick gags, if that makes sense. It's quite lazy actually, which is a shame because I think these writers are very talented and passionate about what they do, but it's like I understand it because they've got to cram so much material into an 11-minute episode, and that's another reason why I think they should do more 22-minute episodes, because then they wouldn't have to do stuff like that. They'd have a bit more freedom to experiment with stories and include stuff a bit more organically and not force in certain gags and certain same characters over and over again. Um, the logistics of writing an episode script are actually quite complicated. People think like they can write an average fan fiction and it's the same thing as writing an episode of the show, and it really isn't, because you've got to mind things like pacing, tone, and especially length. Length is a very big thing. It's easy to overrun when you've only got 11 minutes of screen time to play with.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like kind of hard to like
Yeah. I mean, as
like
someone,
manage
yeah.
time when you're writing things like that.
I mean, I've done both. I've done spec scripts and I've done normal fan fictions, and I can say from experience there is a massive difference in how you handle both.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so that's what. Yeah. But anyway, going back to a Flipmas Carol. Yeah, I mean, we've pretty much said it is a good episode. If you look at it on its own terms and merits, it's actually a great episode. I just wish it did would have actually lasted and had a lasting effect on the show, but obviously it didn't. So that does kind of weigh it down a little bit for me, sadly. But I suppose technically speaking, it's still a good story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've done those two. Now, I don't know if this one counts, and to be fair, because a certain friend of ours has recently covered this, we won't talk about it too much. But would you say Snow Escape counts as a Christmas episode? It does have a few Christmassy elements in
Yeah.
there, but
Like it's mostly snowy themed and it's kind of like a more suspenseful, like kind of more Lynn focused episode, but
yeah,
it does have like Christmassy stuff because they were going to like a holiday party or something. So I
yeah,
guess that kind of counts.
yeah. And you also have there's a scene where like Lola's being a Christmas star or something. When they're trying to lure Lynn out as bait. So I suppose there is enough there to say it's sort of a Christmas themed episode. You can briefly touch on it. Um,
Yeah, and it came out around like Christmas time, so I
yeah,
guess
it
it.
did, didn't it? Although,
Yeah.
oddly enough, it came out just a couple of days before Christmas, because I remember on that year it was Linen Order that came out on Christmas Day. I remember that was a couple of years ago.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
I
and
did
Pop the
watch it
Question. Like those
on.
both came out Christmas Day.
Yeah, even though Linen Order has nothing to do with Christmas, but whatever. You think they
Yeah.
would have switched them around? They would have had Snow escaped me on the day, but there you go. Um,
Yeah. Who knows what they're thinking there
yeah, I don't know.
with the
I
scheduling.
think Nickelodeon doesn't really have a clue what it's doing. But anyway, we'll briefly touch. I'm not going to talk too much about Snow Escape because obviously it's already been covered. But I mean, yeah, it's one of those stories. Like it is technically speaking a really great episode. It's got some of the finest animation the show's ever had. It is suspenseful. It does have some great character interactions and dynamics. The way they all work off each other is really well done, and I do like the fact that they don't kill off some of the siblings straight away, but you know what I mean. They have them eliminated from the chase quite early on, so that it can just focus on a few select characters, and that is to the episode's benefit. So I will give it points for that. I guess my main issue is, of course, the fact that they only ever use Lynn's strength for antagonistic reasons, and because episodes don't exist in a vacuum, I do kind of have to think, well, I don't know. Maybe it's just me because I'm a Lynn fan and I would like to see him do more noble things with the character, and the show doesn't do that much. So it's like it's uneven. There's far more examples of Lynn being antagonistic like this than there are of her like being like heroic or good with her strength, if that makes sense. And maybe
Yeah,
that's
I
more
see
of a
what you're saying. I just think that in this episode, like she did actually make a really good like
oh
antagonistic
yeah,
role, if that makes
absolutely.
sense.
She did make like a really yeah. I mean, she did add a lot of suspense to the story. This episode reminds like when Lynn is really in her element, like how dangerous she can actually be and how
Yeah.
overpowered she can be. It's a bit weird because this episode has her be like an unstoppable force of nature right up until the end. And if there's one like technical issue I would give this against this story, the ending's a little bit anticlimactic. It's like all of that time and then a little bit of snow falling on her is what beats her in the end. I'm like, what? She wouldn't just burst out of that. You know what I mean? Like, they could have maybe had a somewhat more climactic ending, but other than that, I wouldn't say there's anything technically wrong with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think like the animation was so amazing looking. Like I
Oh
every time I
yes.
watch this episode, I'm just amazed at like how good
Oh
they
yeah.
did it in this
Snow
episode.
Escape is possibly the episode of the show, not including the films, obviously, where the animation is at its best. The only episode that maybe surpasses that might be Candy Crush. That was around the same time. I think around late season 6, early season 7 was when the animation, I think, peaked. There was just like a really good period at that point of great looking episodes.
Yeah, definitely. Like in this episode, like there were so many moments where like it just looked really good. Like that
Yeah,
one part where like Lynn Senior, I think, was like getting snowballs thrown at him and he was like
yeah,
kind of running. Like it just looked really
yeah. And
good.
then there was the scene where they're all running down the street, and one by one they're gradually getting pelted with snowballs, and like the way that whole thing is like shot and animated, it just looks really good, really suspenseful. It's like, oh wow, they've just been caught with snowballs. It's like a really well animated sequence. And then you also got where the part where Lola is luring Lynn out as bait, and she's like a Christmas star, and she like shines really brightly and everything. That was another really well animated moment of the episode.
And even that one scene where they were kind of like all standing in a circle with like all the like armor they had on. Like I don't know what it was, but like it was really well animated as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I won't talk too much about Snow Escape. It is a really great episode. If you judge it on its own terms and merits, you could make a case that it is an exceptionally brilliant story. Yeah, I have a couple of little-ish, somewhat subjective issues with it. Well, no, the anticlimactic ending is a somewhat more objective criticism, but yeah, I have a couple of little criticisms, but I still do rate it quite highly. Yeah,
Yeah, it was really enjoyable though.
yeah.
Definitely.
But then we'll go back to a proper Christmas themed episode. Twas the Fight Before Christmas from relatively recently, a late season 7 episode. And I'm just going to say this right off the bat now. Um, this episode is a slightly better version of season three's The Loudest Thanksgiving, if that makes sense. It's somewhat similar in that it has two like family groups come together for the first time to interact. Obviously, in that Thanksgiving episode, you had the Casagrandes interact with the Louths really for the first time. Um, but this time it's some new characters, the Loud Cousins, who have never been shown before up until this point. Um, and yeah, I suppose that's this episode. It does a lot of the same things as that one, if that makes sense. Like it focuses so much on the conflict between Lynn Senior and Lance, to the point where there are somewhat limited opportunities for the rest of the characters to actually interact with each other. The Loudest Thanksgiving was guilty of this, definitely. I think this episode is guilty of it, but maybe to a lesser extent. Um,
Yeah, like this one did it a lot better, like than the Loudest Thanksgiving, but there was still like moments where I was like wanting more or
yeah,
wanting to see more interactions of the
yeah,
other characters on screen.
yeah. Like they did sort of drag out this conflict between the two brothers for quite a while. Like they go so much into it, and I'm like, I wouldn't have minded if they'd. I actually wouldn't have. I suppose that's the thing. Every episode seems it has to have a conflict of some kind to keep it interesting for some people, I guess. But I wouldn't have minded if, like, maybe they'd, in this instance, if they toned it down a little bit and just devoted a bit more time for the episode to sort of breathe and give these characters a bit of something to do. Because it's like, especially with the Loud siblings, once they arrive at that shack with Lance and Leonard and all that, a lot of the sisters, like, they have virtually nothing to do for the entire episode. They're just sort of there. Um, like,
Yeah, and
there's
I don't even
this,
think they get very many lines either. Like, not really any lines, if that
yeah,
makes
like they
sense.
have nothing to do. Um, like, for example, you'd think Lynn Jr. would have been involved in that moment where, like, Lance and the cousins are doing the Christmas tree lifting thing. And also, yeah, there's a few things like you could have done here. I mean, Lincoln and Laurie get a bit of stuff to do with Shelby. That was pretty good. That was a nice subplot. But a lot of them, they're just sort of there. And it's like, hmm, I don't know.
Yeah, like I want another episode like after this, like kind of where like the Louds and their cousins and like
Well, I mean, I
their
think
uncle
what
and
they're going to
aunt
do,
like
they're
come
going to,
back.
yeah, they're going to do like one to ones. Like, I think in season 9 there'll be an episode about Shelby. I think, as I've said before, there is going to be an episode about Lynn and Shiloh, although I'm a bit worried about it for a number of reasons. Um, but yeah, I think they are going to follow up on it. But I still would have liked this episode to have done a bit more, if you know what I mean. It's not as bad as The Loudest Thanksgiving, but I don't know. It's just like I suppose there's the one strength this episode has over that one is that it's only really Lynn Senior and Lance engaging in the petty rivalry, as opposed to literally everyone other than Laurie and Bobby that was in that episode. So it is done better here, but it still has a lot of the same structural and prioritization problems that that episode had.
Yeah, I still would say this one was better than the Loudest
Yeah,
Thanksgiving,
I
like
mean, this is
definitely.
a pretty good. "'Twas the Fight Before Christmas" is a very solid story, whereas "The Loudest Thanksgiving" was pretty meh for me. This one is an improvement. It just doesn't improve in every single way.
Yeah, and like yeah. I was just thinking.
Yeah. I mean, it's yeah. "'Twas the Fight Before Christmas" is like the most recent one of the bunch. I mean, obviously the Casa Grandes did have a couple of Christmas episodes as well. I don't really remember that much from a very Casa Grandes Christmas. I do vaguely remember a couple of things about it. Like I remember this sequence in the middle of the story where Bobby gets into this like snowball fight with Becky and Ricky, and they have like this big snow castle. Um, that was a brief but kind of fun sequence, and I think the Louds did show up towards the end of the story for like a minute or something, which was just random. Um, I don't really remember it that well. I think a lot of people do speak fondly of it, so I'll probably revisit that at some point.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember some from it, but I've seen it a few times, like a few years ago, but I haven't seen it in a while. So
no,
yeah,
it's yeah, and then obviously there are a few other episodes like you said, Alana, which are winter themed but not really Christmas related. So obviously there's snowboard, snow escape, snow way down. There's a lot of episodes with the word snow in the title. You know, snowboard, snow escape, snow way out. It's like yeah, there's a lot of that for some reason.
yeah, definitely.
And then I
They have
think
one like
yeah,
almost every year, kind of like a snow
yeah, and I
themed
think
one.
there's going to be one at Merry Dismas. I think is another season 9 episode that may or may not be Christmas themed. It's certainly winter, or it'd probably be winter themed.
Well, it has like
Well, yeah, it must
it's
be
like says
Christmas themed because it's
Dismas, so
called Dismas. So yeah,
Dismas. So yeah, it's probably Christmas.
yeah. So they're gonna do. There's at least going to be one more coming up, which I'm surprised they haven't already released it. You'd think
That's what I was
because,
wondering because like I thought they were gonna release it
in
this
fact, I'm
year, but
sure
like
it
are
has
they
been
gonna wait till
leaked.
next Christmas? Like that doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
Well, no, it's already been leaked because there is a title card for it, like shown already. I think some people have seen it. Um, it's
Yeah,
like,
but like I just don't know. Like, are we gonna have to wait till next
well, no,
Christmas, or are
surely
they just gonna
not. I
release
think
it?
they'll just release it when they do. Like we said about the Snow Escape example, sometimes they won't release exactly at Christmas, but then they'll release another episode on Christmas. It's weird. I think Nickelodeon's scheduling issues are a bit stupid, but there you go.
I just feel like it would be odd to like release a Christmas episode in like July, for example. Like that would just be kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't think they always get it right, but there you go. And there's also going to be from season 9 an episode called Just Snow With It, which is an episode about Lincoln and his friends starting a shoveling business for ice tickets or something. Um,
Yeah, I've heard that got leaked as well.
yeah, I don't know. Again, that's probably just a snow themed episode rather than a Christmas episode as such. But yeah, so
It sounds
season
like it.
9 will have a couple more episodes like this coming up apparently. Um, but they didn't come out. You'd think they would have come out by now because we just had Christmas, but there you go.
Yeah, who knows? They might
Yeah,
release it
it's
at some
weird.
point next year.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. You'd think like they would try to release these episodes just before or even on Christmas Day, like not after or in a completely different month. It just doesn't really make much sense. Like
Yeah, they've
Nickelodeon,
never done that before. Where
yeah,
they've never like released a
no,
holiday episode
it's
like
weird. Like
outside of the month.
yeah, like they've never like they have released episodes on Christmas Day, just not Christmas episodes. And it's like, what is Lynn and Order in any way, shape, or form a Christmas episode?
I don't know. Who knows? I don't
No,
know why
that's
they
the
would
episode
consider
they
that.
released on Christmas Day, just after Snow Escape. It's like, okay, a bit weird. But yeah, I mean, Lynn and Order is one of those episodes where I mean, I've talked about that one before. I liked it, but I think the third act was a bit didn't go in the right direction. I even did sort of like a bit of a rewrite of it, if you remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which pretty much everyone said they would have preferred, but there you go.
Well,
But yeah. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, there's a fair few episodes from this show that have Christmas themes to them, and they vary in quality. But some of them are very, very good. 11 Lads Leaping in particular is one of the absolute best episodes of the program. A Flipmas Carol is great on its own terms and merits if you ignore the fact that the character development is completely forgotten about after the fact. Caesar's Cheatings is actually quite a strong episode. Snow Escape is a very strong episode. Twas the Fight Before Christmas is an improvement on the Loudest Thanksgiving, but it's still flawed. Um, and yeah, those are sort of like your main ones for now. I'm hoping Merry Dismas will be fun. Out of the 3 or 4 Lynn episodes that we're getting, there's going to be quite a lot of Lynn episodes in season 9. As a Lynn fan, I should be excited for them, but I'm not going to lie. I'm not particularly. At least 2 of them worry me. But this one in particular does sound promising. Like I think Lynn and Henrik could be a decent sort of friendship slash couple potentially, and there could be some funny moments
yeah, most of
between
the
them.
Lynn episodes in like season 9 that have been released, like they don't sound too bad to me.
Well,
Like I
again,
don't know.
one of them's called Crystal Balling, which is about her seeing something like she's. It's a look based episode. We kind of know how those tend to turn out. In fact, I thought her superstition sort of went away after season 4's on on thin ice, which again is another winterish episode, but not a Christmas episode. And if you notice, ever since season 4's on thin ice, Lynn's never really had any superstitious moments. Like it's almost like the actual character development they're stuck. She learned not to get too carried away with luck and superstitious based things. Um, but now, 5 seasons later, we're getting a return of that. And considering we've had episodes like No Such Luck before, I can't help but be a little bit worried about how that one's going to turn out, if that makes sense. Like, it says Lynn uses a crystal ball to see her future and then goes totally bananas trying to control what the future will be.
I feel like it might not be that bad, but I don't know if the fandom's gonna react well to it because of No Such
No,
Luck.
I don't know. I hope it doesn't go wrong. You know what I mean? But you hear that premise and it's like the potential for that episode to go wrong is definitely there. You know, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
please. To be fair, the last couple of seasons have improved, like how well they've written and portrayed Lynn's character substantially. So I'm hoping that continues in season 9. So you've got crystal balling. That does worry me a little bit because of some of those previous episodes, but I'm hoping I'm wrong, of course. And then you've got the gloat where she competes with her 6-year-old cousin, and I'm like, whether she wins and gloats in his face and acts like a bit of a bully, or she loses and basically loses her credibility as the athletic loud, I'm like, neither outcome really makes her look particularly good. I mean, she's competing with a 6-year-old. It's like, this scenario probably isn't going to make Lynn look good, if that makes sense, no matter what they do with it.
Yeah, I mean, as long as he's not like too like mean. But yeah,
Yeah, I'm
I
hoping
see what you mean. I see what you mean though.
like what you suggested is what I hope happens. Guys, for those of you who have seen my recent bit of artwork I did with Ali Jinyo, you're the one where she's saving him from like a waterfall. That's sort of based off a bit of a suggestion that Alana here made. When I mentioned the gloat to her when it was first revealed, the synopsis, she actually did come up with this idea. What if she were to save him in some sort of really great way? And I actually think that's a really fantastic way to end an episode like this. I'm really hoping it
Yeah, that would
happens,
be
you know?
great actually. I really think that that would be a very good ending for an episode
Yeah,
like
it
that.
would. Yeah, it was a really good suggestion that you had there. Which is why I thought, you know what, I sort of made my own version of that episode. I showed you that, didn't I? Um, how I
Yeah.
would write the gloat. And yeah, I think it would be a good way to do the episode, to be perfectly honest. It would make both characters look good. It wouldn't make Lynn look overly mean spirited or harsh to her little cousin. It wouldn't completely like nerf her either, and it would have her do something noble and heroic with her athletic ability, which is something I've said the show should do more of, to balance out the episodes where she's an antagonist. And this would be the perfect way, I think, to handle an episode like that. Whether or not they'll do it, I'm not sure, but that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, it,
Hopefully it's good though. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm hoping I'm wrong about these episodes, but we'll see. But you know, yeah. But you made a very excellent suggestion for how the ending of this could play out. So I'm hoping you're right there.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully though.
Maybe you should be a writer, Alana.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah,
I haven't really written anything in a
do you
while,
want? If you
but
ever want to write anything, I'll give it a read for you. Give it a bit of feedback if you want.
yeah, I've been thinking about it though because it does seem fun to write.
Yeah, like all you want to
Yeah.
do, like think of like a basic 3 act structure. In fact, what you could do, you could have you go at a spec script. I could send you the spec script template that I use, and I could send you the link to some of the actual season 7 spec scripts that I've got my hands on, and you could like use that as a template and maybe like try and write your own little episode script.
Oh yeah, okay, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I'll resend you that clip after we're done with this talk, and maybe you can have a go at that.
All right, cool.
Yeah. So yeah. So anyway, we're going off on a tangent again. Yeah,
Oh
we've pretty
yeah.
much covered all the main Christmas episodes. Yeah, so we've pretty much said what we've got to say there. I'm hoping the season 9 Christmas themed episodes are good. I do have somewhat high hopes for Merry Dismas. I'm thinking that might be a quite a fun episode. Um,
Yeah, I'm actually excited for that one.
yeah.
It
What do you
might be
actually
good.
think? Have you seen the Swiss episode yet with Henrik? Have you
Yeah, I
watched that?
did.
Yeah. What did you think of that?
I actually really enjoyed it. It was better than I expected it was gonna be. Like I
Yeah.
knew it was, I had a good feeling about it, but it was better than I expected.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose, well, again, that's sort of a winter themed episode. I mean, it's based in a snowy landscape, so I suppose you could say that. Yeah, but this one will definitely be Christmas themed, the sequel to it. And I'm sort of glad that they are I think in the more recent seasons, to an extent, they are sort of not wasting characters as much anymore. Like if Henrik was introduced in season two, you can be damn sure he never would have
Oh,
appeared again.
yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
Rocky
That wouldn't
spoke
make
to
sense.
anyone? Has anyone seen him lately? Even though the Spokes family has appeared more and more every season.
I know that's what makes it the weirdest thing ever is the fact that like the Spokes family show up so much, but like
Yeah.
it's just so odd that Rocky wouldn't.
Well, again, I said this in my last. Did you watch my last podcast with Ali Jinyo? Where
I have not watched it yet,
yeah,
but I was
well,
gonna watch it
watch that,
soon.
and it's got. I made another comparison to Gumball, and basically, Rocky Spokes is the Rachel Wilson of this show, and you'll see what I mean when you watch that.
Okay.
Yeah, because they had a very similar character to Rocky in how she was forgotten about. But yeah, I'm glad that they're sort of they're keeping Henrik around. Like most of the older siblings now, if I'm not mistaken, Laurie obviously has had Bobby since the beginning. Lenny now has Gavin. Luna has Sam. Luann has Benny, and now the last of the older sisters has a partner potentially. Although she and Henrik aren't officially a couple yet, they're sort of still friends, but they're sort of like Lincoln and Ronnie Ann, like, oh, we're not a couple, we're just friends, even though there's clearly tension between them.
Right, yeah.
So whether or not they'll just have a relationship like Lincoln and Ronnie Ann, where they're just sort of friends, or if they actually will evolve into a romance, I'm not sure. Yeah,
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see though. Like
yeah.
I wonder how it'll go.
I mean, the whole point of Merry Dismas is them hanging out as friends, and everyone saying, "Oh, they're a couple." So apparently, there is possibly a chance that Lynn might get pissed off with a few of the other characters and like say, "Oh, I'm going to beat you up" or something if you keep calling us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can see that happening.
yeah,
That's exactly how I imagine it like
yeah,
playing out.
probably. But yeah, I'm hoping that episode does turn out quite well. If the first episode with Henrik is anything to go on, then it does seem to balance out Lynn's usual tough persona with a somewhat more affectionate side that she doesn't normally show. So maybe
Yeah,
we'll
that's
get
what
a
I
bit
liked
more of that
about
here.
Alpining Away. It showed like a different side of Lynn, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, it's like she was almost trying to fight against it. Like when she first sees Henrik, she goes into like this, I really love this guy sort of mode. And then Laurie and Lenny gush over it, and then Lynn's like, nah, 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 I crush people. Da, da, da. She's like really trying to fight it or something.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, but we'll see how that plays out. Hopefully, it'll be good. But to be fair, all the Christmas episodes have ranged from good but flawed to excellent, as we've covered in this video. So I do have reasonably high hopes for it. It's the Lynn episode of this season that I'm looking forward to the most. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think that will do for this video. Obviously, it's a little bit late because Christmas has already been, but the feeling of it is still sort of there. So I'll try and get this up as soon as I can.
Yeah, it's
Um,
still December, so
yeah.
yeah, it's still kind of Christmassy.
Yeah. So thank you for another very fun podcast, Alana. I'm sure I'll have you on again very soon. And what do you guys think? What's your favourite Christmas episode? Ours is probably 11 Lads Leaping, but there are some other good ones in there. Maybe Seasons Cheatings is your sort of thing. Maybe it's 'Twas the Fight Before Christmas. If you count Snow Escape, maybe it's that. Um, but yeah, there's a few good choices here. What do you guys think of the Christmas themed Loud House stories? Let us know in the comments below. And yeah, I will see you guys next time.